Trees can decline as a result of competition with other trees and plants. Competing for sunlight is the most common form of competition between trees. Shade-intolerant trees growing under the canopy of larger trees may exhibit death of lower branches, stem curvature, and reduced growth. Trees may also compete with turf and other plantings for available soil nutrients, water, and growing space. Tall fescue and other grasses can stunt the growth of young trees when grown over a tree's root system. Allelopathy is the chemical inhibition of growth and development of one plant by another. Many trees and other plants produce chemical substances that affect the growth of other plants. Allelopathic chemicals may be exuded directly from the plant or released indirectly through decomposition. These chemicals may inhibit growth, seed germination, flowering, or fruiting of nearby plants. In most cases, the inhibition is minor and not easily diagnosed. A few trees are considered highly allelopathic, including walnuts, juglans, sugar maple, Acer saccharum, and black locust, Robinia pseudoacacia. Young trees and stressed plants are more susceptible to allelopathic effects than non-stressed plants or plants with large, established root systems. Pollution, air, water, and soil, damage to trees may be divided into two categories: acute and chronic. Acute toxicity results from exposure to high concentrations of toxic compounds over a relatively short period of time. Chronic injury is due to long exposures, usually in much lower concentrations. Other factors that affect pollution damage are type of pollutant, species tolerance, wind, temperature, humidity, soil grade and type, precipitation levels, and the general condition of the tree. Trees can decline as a result of competition with other trees. Allelopathy is the chemical inhibition of pollution, air, water, and soil, damage to trees. Pollution damage is often difficult to diagnose unless the source of the pollutant is known. The symptoms may mimic other problems such as insect injury and mineral deficiencies. Most of the symptoms of pollution damage will be evident on the foliage. Dieback or necrotic areas may appear on the leaf tips, along the margins, or between the veins. The leaves may appear whitish or silvery. There may be some stippling or spots on the leaf surface. Although any number of chemicals can kill or injure a tree, herbicides are the most frequent culprits. Because herbicides are formulated to kill plants, they contain phytotoxins. The growth regulator herbicides such as 2,4-D and dicamba used to kill broadleaf weeds in the lawn may harm non-target broadleaf plants such as trees and shrubs. These materials are systemic, which means they move throughout the plant. Exposure may be a result of drift, accidental spraying, root grafting, or movement into the soil. If a tree has been exposed to systemic herbicides, the leaves will often begin to curl and cup, and the shoot tips may become twisted. New foliage will show varying degrees of parallel venation. The foliage may appear wilted and become chlorotic before dying and falling off. Other symptoms include venal or intervenal chlorosis, marginal chlorosis, and leaf fall. Exposure to other herbicides may cause trees to exhibit similar symptoms. Herbicide-damaged plants may recover unless exposure is severe. Certain herbicides, non-selective herbicides or soil sterilants, have greater potential to cause serious damage than most growth regulator herbicides, and caution should be used whenever these are used near trees or landscape plants. When applying any chemicals, the instructions and precautions on the label must be carefully followed. To minimize the chance of accidental herbicide injury, never use the same spray equipment to apply herbicides and to apply fungicides or insecticides. Spray only on cool, calm days to avoid drift. Using low pressure increases droplet size and reduces drift. Apply the herbicide to target plants only, and always check the product label for possible phytotoxicity to the surrounding plants. Always use great caution when applying herbicides within the root zone of trees. If they must be used within the root zone, be sure the product is labeled for such use. When applying herbicides in turf grass, guard against potential drift to trees and shrubs. Avoid spraying desirable plants. Sometimes, plant damage to adjacent properties can occur from crop treatments. Most of the time, the damage is not severe and the affected plants recover. Click on the play button to watch the video. All plants can suffer from water deficit, which results in slow growth or even plant death, although some species, known as xerophytes, are more adapted to dry areas. These adjustments allow for better water retention and/or water uptake. Adjustments include thicker, leathery leaves, often with a waxy cuticle or hairy coating, more extensive root systems, or photosynthetic adaptations. Chronic water deficit refers to a prolonged water shortage lasting for days or months. This leads to a decrease in photosynthesis, slowing the tree's growth and energy storage. Reduced growth can often be identified by measuring the distance between the terminal bud scale scars of the individual plant or by long-term observation of the species. Prolonged periods of below normal rainfall can lead to low soil moisture and drought conditions. When moisture decreases below the permanent wilting point, soil water is bound so tightly to the soil particles that the plant roots can no longer absorb water, causing the plant permanent damage. If water deficit continues, tissues may dehydrate to the point of necrosis. In addition to reduced growth rate, leaf size is often reduced, leaf color may be less intense, and early fall coloration and abscission are often evident. Prolonged water stress can leave the plant highly susceptible to secondary infection by pests and pathogens. Just as water deficit can be a serious threat to the health of trees, so too can flooding and excessive irrigation. When soil becomes saturated, it drives most of the oxygen out of the pore spaces of the soil. This stops aerobic respiration in the roots, causing them to switch to anaerobic fermentation. Anaerobic fermentation uses a great deal of storage reserves to release a small amount of energy, thereby starving the tree. The byproducts of anaerobic fermentation can be toxic. Flooded conditions promote the growth of bacteria and fungi that can be harmful to trees and kill beneficial bacteria and fungi that are present in the soil. When trees are flooded and oxygen is driven out of the soil, the lack of oxygen in the soil suffocates roots, changes chemical composition of essential elements, can create mineral toxicities, and can lead to fermentation in root cells. The longer the excess water remains, the more tree health deteriorates. Girdling roots are roots that grow around or across the stem or other roots. Symptoms of girdling may occur in young nursery plants or in mature trees. Trees with severe defects show symptoms at planting time and usually do not survive to maturity. Symptoms of girdling roots may be difficult to detect because they often resemble disorders associated with other stressors. As the trunk and roots increase in diameter, these roots may begin to choke or girdle the tree. Phloem tissues in the trunk become compressed, which may cause swelling directly above the girdling root. The compressed stem weakens the tree and leaves it more prone to failure. Affected trees show symptoms similar to water deficiency, and early fall color and abscission are very common. Eventually, the tree may also show significant dieback. Girdling roots often develop from container-grown plants or poor planting techniques. Research has shown that trees planted too deeply are more prone to develop girdling roots than those with the trunk flare exposed, although some species are more likely to develop girdling roots than others. Often, girdling roots are not detected until symptoms begin to appear in the above-ground portions of the tree, when the girdling roots are too large to be removed without severely damaging the structural support and uptake capabilities of the root system. Often, the only way to deal with girdling roots is to prevent them from occurring. Arborists should carefully inspect nursery stock for girdling or circling roots. It is very important not to plant the tree too deeply and to prevent soil or mulch from collecting around the base of the trunk to minimize the development of adventitious roots. Girdling roots may cause minimal damage or can become a serious problem and can lead to the decline and even death of trees. Additionally, when girdling root symptoms become obvious, it may be too late to remedy. Because removing large, woody girdling roots can compromise a tree's support and uptake capabilities, the best remedy against girdling roots is to prevent them.
The first step would be to slide the root mass out of the container, taking care not to disturb it any more than you absolutely have to. The next step in the process would be to pull the excess soil off the top of this root ball to in fact find the bud union and the first main lateral roots. Now that we've found where the first main lateral root is in this ball, it would be appropriate to put it into the hole. Once we're certain the root ball is at the proper depth, there's another step involved in planting container trees. The issue has to do with the encircling roots that have developed while the plant was in the container. There's a number of ways to deal with this. The traditional train of thought would be to simply cut or sever them in various places around the root ball. However, another way to accomplish that would be to, again, loosen this root mass if possible, allowing some of the existing soil as we backfill to transition into that root zone so that the tree has an easier time to root out into the parent soils in this area. As we planted this tree, we found a root here that runs across the top of the root ball, which in time could have encircled and girdled this trunk. Normal practice would be, as Tom did, to simply remove the root so we minimize the risk of it encircling and girdling the trunk.
If girdling roots develop, it may be possible to remove the portion in contact with the stem. Roots that have become grafted to the trunk or roots that are too large, larger than 1/3 of the trunk diameter, should be left in place because severing them will cut off a large portion of the tree's root system. Moreover, removal of girdling roots should be avoided during the growing season. If the girdling roots have compromised the structural stability of the tree may have to be removed. Abiotic disorders affect the normal growth and development of a tree. They may disrupt water and mineral uptake or other vital functions, which sometimes creates a domino effect of physiological dysfunction within the tree. Many agents of abiotic disorders are primary stress factors that can become the first stage in a spiral of decline. Each successive stress that follows contributes to this decline, which can further reduce the possibility of reversing the trend. Signs of abiotic disorders may be difficult to recognize. Learning the history of the site and of the tree often provides the biggest clues. Knowing about temperature or moisture extremes in recent years, for example, can help. Unfortunately for the diagnostician, it can take a long time for the tree to react to the primary stress factors. Because of this, the link between cause and effect is often lost. If a transplanted tree declines or dies within the first year, the most likely cause is either a lack or an excess of water, which may be related to planting depth, soil compaction, or poor species selection. Every species of tree has optimal levels of light, water,